I'm a chemist, so I should introduce by saying that I'm a scientist or an entrepreneur, and I'm definitely coming up on the limits of my entrepreneurial skills and been doing deep dive into the technical aspect of this for the past while and neglecting some of the business marketing aspect, which is now becoming clear that I need to run into. So the general market we're going after are radiation shielding garments that are used in operating rooms, specifically with fluoroscopy. So these are not patient shielding. This is not the stuff you'd use in the dental office, although we do expect there's a market there, but our primary target market are the surgeons that have to stand on their feet, run around and do surgery for 12 hours and wear 15, 20 pounds of lead. Because part of the procedure they're using includes real-time x-rays, basically fluoroscopy. So getting a target market size, how many users there are, we expect there's about 100,000 surgeons. And then for every surgeon, we're sort of estimating there's about 5 additional personnel. So those are nurses, radiation technicians in the room. So it's a reasonable size market, but it's not a huge market. And that makes it challenging from a business raise perspective, right? This is never going to be a unicorn company. So I'm out here on the West Coast and have a lot of friends in deep tech. And when we start talking about financial dollars to raise and what the market size is, it's very clearly not a scalable software. And that's been a challenge.
Do you talk about that in your presentation here? How big you think the market is?
So estimates are domestically, it's about 50 million a year. Internationally, close to about 1 billion. That includes, it kind of depends on what you include in that market. So if we're talking about just garments, I think the 50 million domestically is a pretty safe bet. Internationally, when you include radiation shielding, that can also include infrastructure shielding. So like the lead that goes into the wall or into a panel so that someone can take an x-ray. And it's sort of complicated because the materials are generally available, right? Particularly in the construction industry, right? Anybody can go buy 0.5 millimeter of lead sheeting and tack it to a piece of drywall. So how to estimate that is, it's been a challenge to say the least. But there are a lot of manufacturers of these garments, because what gets sold is basically the fabric that makes the radiation shielding, and then you sew it into 2 pieces of additional fabric. So that can be a woven nylon, it can be a piece of vinyl. And if you are familiar with these in a hospital, you'll sort of see the evolution of them over the years. I've had people show them to me that they bought in the 1990s, and they'll be heavy pieces of lead salt embedded in a polymer sewn in between 2 pieces of vinyl. The whole thing's very heavy. It's fairly easy to clean, or wipe down, but it's very heavy. And then there's a whole bunch of other problems that go along with this particular design, where you've got multiple pieces of fabric. The big one that our technology will address is that if the garment is not hung properly or cared for properly, the inner shielding material will crack or break, and you can't really tell that because it's in between 2 pieces of fabric. So hospitals are required to generally inspect garments every year. They have to feel them for cracks, sometimes x-ray them to see if there's any damage. And I'll get to
How aware are hospitals of these issues?
where are every hospital that uses these radiation
No.
shields.
My question is, you've identified a problem, but how big a problem? Like, are the persons in charge of the maintenance of these garments extremely aware and very bothered by these cracks they have to find? Or, oh shit, I didn't even realize that.
It's one of those headaches that is annoying, but it's become part of the process, so the routine. It's so the Joint Commission and Acorn and all these others require certain standards for inspecting the garments and testing them. A lot of radiation safety officers have strong opinions about this, right? The crack that develops in a shielding garment isn't going to
Kill the person.
yeah. But a lot of this regulation is much more around making sure the hospital is taking care of their people with no, let's say, acute feedback about when this might be an issue, right? You get exposed to a lot of radiation at work, but you're not going to have it develop cancer for 20 years.
Mhm.
So they put in place these protections, but there's no obvious outcome.
So in large part, if most garments were cracked or broken today, few hospitals are aware of any employee that got sick on account of it.
Yeah.
What you can see where I'm going. I'm wondering, like, yeah, it's cracked, but we have budget constraints and it's not that cracked. I mean, yes, it's heavy, but it's always been heavy. I'm wondering how.
It's one of those requirements for maintaining your garment, but I'm not sure what like I said, what the feedback or what the impetus to fix it is. I'd say the bigger headache from a departmental and radiation standard or radiation safety officer office is the having to go find all the garments in the hospital and keep track of them on a spreadsheet about where they are and when they've been inspected. And there's a couple of companies out there that have developed tracking software, right? There's like tags you put on it, you scan them, and it keeps everything in a database. So it's a big enough problem that there are companies that are trying to address it. I don't know that my technology is going to completely get rid of that particular problem. What it will get rid of is whether you can tell whether it's cracked or broken. Like you'll be able to see it, and I'll get that to there in a minute.
Okay.
I mean, here, I'll the impossible to sterilize, that's a whole nother issue. That there have been numerous academic papers showing these things are covered in bugs. You can get rid of some of them by wiping them down, which is sometimes what happens, but they're potentially a large source of hospital-acquired infections. How big that source is, nobody's ever tied, directly the radiation shielding garment to an infection or done any sort of systemic study on that. But we do know they're covered in bacteria, and that's gross. Because
given his intense interest in this subject, let me call on Ronald. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, it's important to realize that radiation healthcare workers get is not direct radiation from an X-ray source. What they get is scatter and backscatter, so it's a small percentage of the whole thing. But yeah, they're standing there hour after hour, day after day, and that starts adding up. So it's a low intensity radiation, but it's continued. And that's a different type of exposure compared to short bursts of higher radiation. So even the relation between developing side effects caused by radiation and this level of radiation is difficult to establish.
Mhm.
There's not much science on that. So it is something that the industry is aware of, but it's really difficult to do investigations. If you want to write a clinical evaluation report according to MDR standards, you cannot claim that X-ray radiation is dangerous because all the evidence comes from studies that were done around 80 years ago in a company east of the Netherlands called Germany. You can't use those data, but everybody knows it's dangerous. So if you go to notified body and say, well, this is this is X-ray radiation, it's dangerous, they'll just nod. Yeah, sure. You don't need a reference for that.
Mhm.
But that's how difficult it is to get good data on this. So it's bloody difficult to get hard data on radiation effects. And I see, and I hesitate to talk about that, but we have to assume and guess our way into it because we don't have evidence.
When you say something like that, it makes me even more skittish. It's just, one of my maxims is I say, medical devices are not a nice to have, they're a have to have. And if it would be nice to have lighter garments that were easier to, okay, but we have to redo our, rehabilitation unit is where the money's going to go, or our, ECG machines are broken, or our, these things we have to replace and money is limited. So when it's like, well, it's kind of hard to, and, they're doing these procedures now and there's judgment involved and there's not hard, if you this, then this happens. I get a little
welcome to my world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am very much a scientist. I want to see
Yeah.
numbers here, outcome there, but this is it's a weird market for many reasons. It's also a garment. So, you know, on some level, people are choosing what they're going to wear. And so we've put
I've had these discussions and with how hard can it be? And I said, well, we're looking for volunteers for a crossover design study. Are you interested in being one of those volunteers? We will expose you to radiation. Would you like to do that? And that stops the discussion.
Nice.
But it's, yeah.
And what
Still, we haven't found enough volunteers for that study.
Given the ambiguities and risk, what compelled you to chase this opportunity?
Well, so you're looking at this, Joe, as a like, do we need radiation shielding or not radiation shielding? But the answer here is everybody agrees that we need radiation shielding. That's sort of agreed. And I have a technology that makes it so much better for so many reasons. And it's one of those, I just have a much, much better product. And I've had a lot of trouble coming up with my one reason that hospitals are going to just, you know, throw money at me. The sterilization one might be that reason. My product, you can autoclave, you can store it in a bucket of bleach, you can, you know, clean it in between procedures. The reason I think users are going to buy it is it's elastic. So the radiation shielding material we're making means as you're wearing something, so imagine wearing something, a suit, you know, that covers your torso, whatever, that isn't elastic. And then imagine wearing one that is elastic, right? That's a very different range of motion, comfort level, opportunity to move around. So surgeons that are wearing these for 12 hours a day performing surgery, it's going to be a better design, a much, much better design. So it's going to be soft, it'll be lighter weight. And then the really big one, the reason I've been going after this, Joe, you asked, is it's non-toxic. So there's no lead. I've designed it entirely with elements that are, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could eat them if you needed to. Yeah. And that makes it a lot easier. So the one part I didn't talk about in these older garments is that, particularly in the older ones, when the reason we should throw out all the current radiation shielding is that the salts that are embedded in that polymer leak out. And you can show this by swabbing the surface, and other people have done this, not me, but there are studies showing that the lead actually comes out of the radiation shielding garment, and that people that work in hospitals with radiation shielding garments have fairly high levels of lead contamination in them. So we know lead is bad, but there haven't really been any great alternatives to lead for radiation shielding. Lead is cheap, it's easy to work with. And recently people have started realizing bismuth is better, which is great. So there's lots of different products. We're starting with the thyroid shield and the apron. Michelle, this is for you, the FDA. It's 510(k) pre-market notification exempt. These are my we've tested the biocompatibility. It's totally non-toxic, blah, blah, blah. So the big vision is we're getting the lead out. And by making a better material that has similar properties to lead, you know, that you can mold it, you can shape it. It will always be a bit more expensive, unfortunately. But particularly in high consumer or patient care contacts, you know, like the medical industry, getting lead out seems like kind of a no-brainer. So quick process, we're a bismuth-based company. I got started in this as a graduate student designing bismuth nanoparticles, and then realized the technology could scale up to microparticles, and we can, after a lot of development, iteration, and breaks, we take a chunk of bismuth, we grind it down into a powder, we mix it into silicone, and then we mold it into whatever we want. And we can get extremely high rates of bismuth in there. So the sort of secret sauce, the chemistry, is the coating on those bismuth particles. So there's a very, very small chemistry coating that goes into making that allows it to integrate and actually bond into the silicone. So we can make 83% by weight, or sorry, 93% by weight bismuth silicone.
You said something that my very non-chemical mind could hear and like relate to. have you thought of it? This may not be right. I don't know if it's like your biggest selling point, but would a tagline like "Get the lead out" be applicable for you?
Yeah, that's we've been just say no to lead.
Get the lead out is a recognizable phrase. I just Googled it. Apparently, it's the name of an Aerosmith album. And it means to hurry up or move faster, which you could argue in your pitch that when you're not wearing such a heavy garment, you can move faster. I don't know.
All right, I'll look into it. Yeah, I like it. So we predominantly work with
Patient Rick Stockton, you have something to add? John Richard, you're
Yeah,
up.
I was just, you were talking about risk before, Anna, and I was thinking, of course, there's always and I have to deal with this in my business a lot, is what is the risk of doing what you're doing, and what is the possible benefit and things like that. And I was thinking a switch from going with hard historical data, which is really difficult to gather over a long period of time in a disciplined, verifiable way, and 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 making part of your pitch around the probability of exposure, which you have done, and also implying a perceived culpability in the light of what we now know to subsequent lawsuits that would come from people who've been doing this and they're 50 years old and they find out they've got some sort of radiation-induced disease. And of course, you could use the same argument with your garment material toxicity and the well-known buildup of lead in the body over a period of time and all of its effects. And you might even also be able to look at ergonomic studies showing that heavier, more difficult garments are more often damaged, because when I've had to go in for an x-ray for a broken whatever, I've had, you watch the way these technicians lift these really heavy garments up and boom, put them down on, not on purpose, but they're just heavy over a period of time. And also, and this is sort of a, I don't even know what this is, but Elon Musk is designing spacesuits which are literally changing everything for EVA suits. And I would think their material would probably be vastly superior to lead in several different ways, unless depressurization deconstructed the foam inside them. And the reason I'm looking at proposing all these risk things is when I was a process engineer before I was a design engineer, I ended up having to spend a lot of time convincing design engineers to make a change. And sometimes they have a little bit big egos, and I understand this. And so I would present a design change in terms of risk. And I would actually create a design FMEA analyzing the current level of risk in their design and then looking at that. And nobody gives a design FMEA to normal consumers, but we use that information to build arguments. And I got design changes approved all the time, and I wasn't even one of the design guys. So sometimes an unquantifiable risk or a difficult to quantify risk is a superior argument to a known risk. And that was what I was thinking when you were saying that.
Yeah, it's the cosmic radiation issue with space travel is a complicated physics question that I looked into that market, specifically looking at shielding airplanes because they do get exposed to a fair amount of radiation, particularly pilots who happen to fly through what do they call them, a cosmic storm. It's because that industry is so weight sensitive, it can be very hard to justify certain types of shielding, and the amount of shielding that you would need to really protect yourself from a lot of that cosmic radiation is complicated. So and certainly making those arguments early on without knowing more about the industry has been a challenge. So I've really focused on medical, but my expectation is that we make this material, we get products out there, we start a company, and that there'll be other applications for it, right? I really see this as a technology, not necessarily a market specific company. Um, all right, so with that said, we're starting to get into the branding aspect of things, which is, Joe, where you may be more interested in this. So I have a designer who's kind of come up with a set of branding operations. So, you know, it is a tech. I'm a tech person. I'm happiest sitting in the lab. With that said, I'm designing a garment, and keeping that in mind, this is something people wear, and people care about what they wear, even in the operating room. So we've been trying to think of ways to really showcase the performance of the tech while keeping it interesting and, you know, new basically. So I'm sure you've all seen these radiation shielding garments. They tend to be very, you know, performance streamlined. There's nothing slick, fancy, or streamlined about it. But we do have the opportunity to make it sort of more designed. So my designer loves using the term considered design. So performance oriented with a considered design. We're looking at LORE, limiting occupational radiation. And
That's funny. I have to say that because looking at those three letters together, I said lore. And then I was like, they have that line over the O to make it a hard O. So I sat here and I pronounced it and I was like, oh, lower.
yeah, she liked the line making where, you know, we're going below, limiting it, LORE. It's got a long ooh, I think. Yeah.
So it's not intended to be pronounced low.
LORE.
Well,
Ooh,
okay,
yeah.
again, I'm saying that means a hard O.
Is
Oh,
it, is it kind of like lure lock?
low.
Lure?
LORE.
Lure.
She's been
Lure.
pronouncing it LORE. Oh, LORE. So lower without the W.
Right, that's phonetically how I would read that.
Perfect.
Well, it's not perfect if you're going to pronounce it lore. Then it's just confusing.
All right, then I need to start pronouncing it lower.
Uh,
Yeah. And it's a working thing. Again, I've started to recognize my limits on the marketing side of things.
Where did you find your marketing person?
She was introduced to me by another medical device sort of
Okay.
network through.
I'm not trying to second guess. I'm just wondering. I'm just glad to hear that's not somebody I know from, you know, she offered to do some work for me for free kind of thing.
No, she's actually designed all the shielding devices. So here's her slide on considered performance.
Mhm.
So we're going for durable, accessible, sculptural, which, as you can see, is a pretty significant brand differentiation from the current radiation shielding garments that tend to be all blue or have
And
rainbow
yours will be
colors.
black?
Hmm?
Will yours be black or gray?
These are our color palettes.
Oh, I see. These four are your choices?
These are the four that I've formulated pigments for to paint.
Okay,
And
because I'm wondering, all of your marketing so far is very heavy in black, reversed out white type. I'm wondering, was
oh
that
yeah,
part of it?
that's me as a materials designer. So this is the thyroid shield, and I've got the white jade. We ended up going with a slightly lighter green, and
And it looks great on you.
chalcedony.
Wear everything well.
And this is her sketch of the design, but the primary differences with the shielding, and I'm afraid this one got a little scratched, is that it's a molded piece of silicone. It's elastic, it's soft. You can roll it up, stick it in your pocket, fold it, and it's
Would this
fine.
be the weight of your entire garment?
What's that?
Would that be the weight of your entire garment?
This is the entire garment.
Wow. I mean, and the one that I wear as a gown would be that same.
We have a lightweight formulation, so it's a mixture of both bismuth and a number of other elements, and then there's another layer on the back for scatter. That's I'm not going to get too deep into the physics of
Right.
this, but
Well, I'm wondering, like, for someone whose only exposure to this has been in a dentist chair, when they lay this thing on me, it's really heavy. how skeptical or afraid a potential user might be when you've gone from a 50-pound thing to a 3-pound thing, being like, are you sure this is going to protect me? Because I'm used to, it's almost, I mean, having you put that bib on, I'm like, that's replacing it? And there was nothing in your presentation so far that led me to believe, oh, we're talking like, it just didn't occur to me that we were talking flimsy.
Well, the secret of the dental radiation, Joe, is you don't actually need that apron at all. They put it on you to make you feel better.
Okay, but I wonder how many hospital workers feel better wearing a heavy thing and won't feel better wearing a flimsy thing.
There are lightweight formulations out there. And so people are aware that there are lighter garments and that there's a range of them. We're designing our current tech to be 0.5 millimeter lead shielding equivalent. That's sort of the industry standard. Well, don't get me started on the physics of why that's a silly standard, but it is. And that will be something we advertise, you can demonstrate, you can test. Part of our go-to marketing strategy will be educating radiation safety officers in hospitals. And so they are the ones that are in charge of saying, yes, you can wear that shielding garment. No, you can't wear that shielding garment. And so being very clear with them that there's, meet these standards, you can test it yourself. This seems light and flimsy. It's not that light and flimsy. It's like 300 grams. So it's thin and it's stretchy. But it does have some weight to it. So you wouldn't be mistaken this isn't blocking radiation. But I do appreciate your skepticism.
The term 300 grams means nothing to a layperson like me. I have no idea how heavy that is.
Oh, what is, I don't know what 300 grams is off the top of my head.
So just
300 milliliters of water.
Oh, okay. Now I know. I have no idea if I could even fill my coffee cup with that. So just translate it into human when you're talking about you don't have to do it
Probably
now.
about the weight of an apple.
I'll go ahead and look up 300 grams, did you say?
Yeah.
And tell you what it is in pounds.
It's gonna be 3/4 of a pound. A pound is like 455 grams.
It is 2/3 of a pound.
2/3 of a pound.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this
How
one,
much is a regular one? Regular neck shield. How much does that weigh?
it depends on the design.
What,
They're-
5 pounds? 10 pounds?
No, they're going to be comparable in weight. So there's lots of designs out there. Your thyroid sits at the base of your neck, and so they're all designed to block that. How much of it they block, how much of it, if you turn your head this way, we designed ours specifically so you could be turned 90 degrees either side from source and be directly shielded, and that it would go under the shielding apron, so there would be coverage. And then we're going to sell them with 2 different straps. I'm wearing a shielding strap right now, so it's got shielding that goes around the back of my neck. We're going to sell them without straps that have no shielding in them. Some people absolutely have to have shielding in the back. Some people absolutely have to not have shielding in the back for that scatter effects. So we're just going to sell it with you pick. And then both of them are designed with these, we're calling them nubbins, but we don't have a better word for it. They just pop on and off. They're made out of silicone. You can pull them out, clean them. You can wash this in the sink with soap and water if you need to. And we've designed it so that it sits on your chest, on your collarbone, and keeps the weight off of your trachea, but still sits close to your thyroid. And that's supposed to give you the best amount of shielding possible. But I bought a couple of these thyroid shields, and
You just said supposed to.
Sorry?
So like when you're talking about your product, you got to remove supposed to.
You said you're supposed to, and Michelle Lada's objecting to supposed to from a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah, I just realized she wasn't talking about her product. I'm just like, when you're talking about your product, you can't say supposed to. It does, and then you have to prove it.
Okay. I guess I used that terminology because it's a garment and
Yeah.
saying, here's a garment, it does this if you wear it properly. And maybe that's the way I should phrase it. But people, people wear them where they hang down their neck like this, because they don't like it around their neck and then it doesn't block anything. What actually happens in the operating room with these radiation shielding garments is very different than how it's supposed to.
But to Michelle's point, Michelle, when manufacturers describe the features and benefits of their product, can they speak in terms of when, assuming that the instructions for use are being faithfully observed, or do they have to qualify and say, now, if you do the IFU properly, then
We have used, sorry, this is Donovan, we have used in the past when applying training, when used properly, when applied properly, those words.
okay. Thank you, Donovan.
But one of the major advantages, as I mentioned, with the current radiation shielding is you have to have specialized hooks where everybody hangs it up, or specialized racks. And apparently this can be problematic in hospitals because people fight over hooks, or there's not enough space, or blah, blah, blah. And this one doesn't crack, doesn't break. It's made out of silicone, so you can roll it up, you shove it in your pocket, stick it in a travel bag, and you don't need to have specialized storage for it. So there's no like, this will save this number of lives argument to this radiation shielding material, but it is from a systemic advantage. There's a lot of advantages to it.
That I was just thinking about a lot of advantages, and we've covered so much in terms of all of these features and benefits that the message here is very convoluted to me. Now, I know this is a workshop, you're not making a pitch, this is an value analysis committee, but when I think of a value proposition, I'm all over the place with this. I'm really.
Yep.
I'm sorry, this is supposed to lift you up. We love you.
No, I mean, I've come to terms with this over the years, is that there's a lot of players involved. There's the hospital system, there's the radiation shielding, radiation safety officers, there's the users and the wearers, and then there's the rest, the environmental argument. And everybody has a different reason that they should think this material is better. And a reason to do it. But there's no one, this device does this.
May I ask, I know somebody just interjected, but let me quickly ask, who is the leader in radiation shielding today?
There's a number of players. There's Xenolite, there's Burlington Medical, there's Infab. There's a lot of
Are they aware of you, any of them?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't reached out to any of them directly, but I've been talking about this and I have a number of contacts in common.
In a few weeks, Daniel Shepard is going to be talking with us. He's our go-to for strategic partnerships and the like. There just seems so much expense and risk in this for you. I can't help but think that having a big brother or sister would be a safer route for you, because I fear like this could be an all or nothing thing for you, and I sure as shit don't want nothing.
So what pops in my head, and I'd like to add this, Donovan. Sorry, not on video today.
How bad do you look, Donovan?
Pretty bad. No, it was a long night with a sick puppy. So 70 pounds at 6 months now. English lab. So anyways, what pops into my head, and I've already reached out to, texted a couple of friends of mine that are chiropractors. And most chiropractors that I know have an x-ray machine in their office, and they're not afraid to spend money. Literally, my buddy who's a chiropractor just dropped $40,000 on a what do they call that? Stem. It's not stem cell, but it's an electric pulse thing that causes stem cells to migrate. Anyways,
Okay,
that's a network of people that aren't afraid to spend money and cannot stand. They've all complained about the weight of the product, how do they store it, everything. I've literally discussed that with them when they've done x-rays. And then the other thing is, coming up the first week of December is radiology and imaging show in Chicago. Everybody in radiology and imaging, I think it's called the RSNA, is going to be in Chicago at McCormick Place. Don't know if walking the floor and running into people is something that you're interested in.
Yeah, I mean, it's figuring out what the strategy for the go-to-market strategy is here. Like I said, we've got the material, the process to make the thing reasonably well down. We don't have an apron yet, and we pretty much have a thyroid shield that's yeah, a week or two away from being ready to go to a manufacturer to mass produce. To Joe's point, finding a partner that wants to you know, knows the industry and knows the business side, that's I think sort of the strategy I'm coming around to. I'm gonna have to adopt. You know, my
I'm
sort of
sorry, what
understand.
did you say you've come around to? What is your strategy that you're going to adopt?
Going to partner with someone who's better at the business, the sales, marketing, distribution side of things. I have a manufacturing partner who's interested in sort of launching a small company where his company would make it, and then we would do direct to consumer sales, start with a thyroid shield and move on up to aprons and other things. You know, I'd hoped to start a company that was able to really grasp the revolutionary marketing potential of these products, right? So, you know, not integrate into an existing radiation shielding culture, basically, and to really make a new, better, bigger product.
Before I call on you, I'll ask you to put your hand down and instead ask all the folks on the call to raise their hand if, from what they've heard so far, they believe that Anna would do well to reach out to strategic partners. Andre, push the button. I mean, I'm gonna raise my, I don't know if I can raise a hand. So we're looking at we're looking at least 50% here. Sue, you are an entrepreneur of a small company. You didn't raise your hand. Why not? Oh, because technical issues?
No, I did raise my hand.
Oh, you used your physical hand. You pulled an Andre.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's more than 50% though. Josue, you're writing here also dental clinics. Agree. I think for the same reason that many of us are saying, consider strategic alternatives, we probably also want to focus on a market first. And Anna, you believe the first market to hit is what? What's the biggest market you have to approach?
Oh, surgeons that wear aprons during X-ray fluoroscopy.
Okay. Juha, you had your hand raised to make a contribution.
Yes, hello. I think that the main issue is that you have to get inside the hospital's main door. So you have to have an FDA approval before nothing happens. And I don't see an overnight transition at any hospital from the existing products to the new one. I would see like a gradual parallel transition that some of the people inside the surgical theater would prefer to have your product. And once they've used that for a couple of months, the other guys who have these heavy lead dresses on them, they start to think about your product, and that's the way to proceed. So I would try to find a couple of leading hospitals and try to work with them first and build the concept and get a key opinion leader and then start expanding the business.
What's the cost point in comparison to Zero point of getting a couple of leading hospitals? What's the cost point?
We're gonna initially price it as a premium product, but not absurdly out of range. So ultimately it'll be cheaper to produce than the current aprons. The big cost is getting the mold set up, right? We're not buying bolts of fabric and having a person cut out the shape and sew it together. We have to actually have molds and produce the device to put it together. But once we have the molds, it can be less expensive than.
Appreciating that I've given this fewer than 30 seconds of thought, you might consider having beta testers who get, like the first however many hundred units will get it at a discount just to get some adoption before you go premium, because there's so many unknowns here. Do you have many? We have time. I'm not concerned about the top of the hour. Do you have many more slides that you wanted to cover? We've taken you all sorts of afield.
Nope. Just thanking all the people that have funded the tech.
Okay. So go back a slide then.
What's up?
Go back one then, if this is just.
One more?
Yeah, I'm just, whichever one you feel has the most information for us to absorb.
I mean, we could talk about
That's
that.
this one. Need to establish capacity. Okay, so number 5 is almost comical. There's a lot to those first 4 that's it. I'd like to lose 50 pounds. All I have to do is change my diet and exercise. That's it. So I might take that out, but what can you tell us about your progress on these 4?
Well, we've tested the biocompatibility. So done some extract testing. Nothing comes off of it. The product is silicone, predominantly silicone. It's coated in silicone, and that makes it pretty straightforward. We have a manufacturing partner who is got a lot of these certifications in place, and so working with them to put in the QMS and handle that they currently make a lot of regulated medical devices as well, so they're familiar with it, and that's
what makes you think it does have to be biocompatible?
Sorry?
What makes you think it needs to be biocompatible?
Well, it's a new material and it has direct skin contact.
Yeah, but I don't want to wear your device on my skin. You can have an inside layer with biocompatible material and you don't have to test it anymore. Or at least you only test the inside.
Well, I mean, the thyroid shield the apron doesn't sit directly against your skin, but the thyroid shield will.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, part of the testing biocompatibility is I don't want to make something that's going to be a problem. So, this is entirely coated in silicone, so it's not really going to be an issue.
Okay.
The X-ray attenuation aspect of it is it's an interesting one, but it's just physics, so that one's very solvable. And yeah,
does this now register with FDA? I see Michelle had to drop off. Oh no, she's there with her mic on. Michelle Lott?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was obtaining the runway.
Registering is not a significant thing, right?
It's not significant, but it's a lot of money.
$10,000.
It's like $7,600 this year.
How much money do you have left, Anna? I know you had a nice grant.
we've got funding left.
You're 510K exempt, but you're not GMP exempt, correct?
Right.
Right. So you still have to have almost a full quality management system short of design controls.
Right. And so that's why partnering with this manufacturer is
Right. So you can't rely on your manufacturers quality management system because you're gonna need a supplier controls to qualify them as a supplier for not only the product, but then the quality management system. And who's gonna take the complaints? Is that gonna be your company or their company? And whose
we're-
name is on it?
Yeah, we're still in negotiations about this. You know, one option is that we spin out a third company that's specifically designed to market and sell this device.
Yep. So that company will have to have a complaint and reporting procedure at the very least. And
Michelle,
management reviews and internal audits and supplier audits and all of that still apply.
I know you have fractional offerings and the like. Is there something QMS related you could do for Anna?
Yes. So similar to like a fractional, a CFO or the like, we can do those things for you once they're established and implemented. Then we can handle like your complaints for you. We short of taking the calls. You know, we can handle doing the supplier audits and performance reviews and internal audits and management reviews for a fixed price over a year.
We have a lot of different expertise on the phone, of course. And when you get off the phone today and you look at your top 3 things to do, what are they? Get more sleep, and what else?
Get more sleep. I'm in the middle of sort of coming around to what the business strategy needs to be, and what I want Stark Street Materials to be, what I want.
And do you have someone with whom you're working on strategy that you feel good about and trust?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All right, continue.
And so, you know, going with I guess everybody's raising their hand in favor of finding a strategic partner. And I think that's probably something I'm gonna have to sort of wrap my head around and dive into a little bit deeper. You know, I have discovered over the past couple of months that I don't really like this biz dev stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the first things you offered. Your expertise as a chemist making this thing is not the question, but everyone on the phone with all of our different expertise emphatically agree that all of these other disciplines, strategy and marketing and distribution and such, are real things that are not part-time casual things that you, when you have a chance, you're going to get your head around.
You know, we're still deep. You know, part of our grant and funding is the technical aspect of it. So I spend a lot of time with the technical and managing my team from an engineering standpoint and you know, process engineering and all that. So that's predominantly where my head is at, and recognizing that I need to basically outsource the business side of it to someone else I'm just coming around to it.
Okay, well, we're gently supporting you with a group hug. Ronald, you have your hand raised?
Yes, if I look at the European situation, I'm an expert on Europe. I would think it's not a medical device, it's the PPE, personal protective equipment, and there the regulatory pathway is much easier than going through medical devices route. And having said that, I know that in Europe, it's much easier to get an argument with hospitals about worker safety. There's much more attention to that. They're more sensitive to that argument, and I would think that if you have a few surgeons, I mean, it's literally their balls are on the line, right? And so they will be sensitive to having high quality and very practical equipment to aprons to protect themselves. I've worked with a company who makes they make all kind of textiles in all sorts of forms, and I've seen them struggle with exactly the same problem, like having something that's a garment, but it comes from a completely different world. It's not fashion, and the marketing around there is it can be a challenge. And so I have some experience with that. So please reach out if you want to have if you want to reflect on that, and feel free to approach me. Joe, can you share my email address with Anna?
I can it be more convenient for me if you don't mind if you just type it in the chat box?
Okay, I'll do that.
I'll
I'll do
access
that.
it then.
Okay, thanks.
Michelle Mitchell.
Yes, this is a wonderful presentation, and I just want to share some personal experience with Anna. I work for a manufacturer who's in business almost 40 years. And about last 15 years, they kind of branch out to different product range. So they developed this DVT product. It's 510K clear, and also is MDD class 2A. So they're working on MDR class 2A right now. Is selling in Australia and some EU countries, but they're trying to bring it to the US. That's why they have the 510K cleared. So as some panelists know that Nick used to be working with me. So we thought, between Nick and I and the manufacturer can make the product and we can bring the product into the US. But after 18 months, almost $200,000 spent, we didn't sell a unit. So I know you're on the fence thinking if you want to partner with somebody or you want to take on this on your own. So I think that's obviously you have some fundings and we run out of funding. So I just think that, I don't know, I just feel like if you get somebody has the expertise in the field and also have the marketing background, probably would be a better way to go. But obviously final decision would be yours. But I just want to share what we went through for 18 months, $200,000, and we didn't sell a unit. So.
Donovan, you had something?
Yes. So the reason why I'm speaking about, chiropractors and RSNA is I've got 30 years in business development. And before you start going down the path of partners and all of that, maybe get some friendlies to try it out. And that's why I spoke about a couple of chiropractors. Maybe you know a couple. I'm also willing to talk to a friend of mine who's a VP of supply chain for one of the major hospitals in the United States. He's actually been senior VP of supply chain at 2 different hospital chains. So more than happy, but before, forgive me the name, the one who just spoke about spending $200,000 not selling an item, getting some friendlies to give some insight on some sample product. Once you've got a couple of testimonials, that's when you get a good marketing company to blow it up and sell before ahead of your ski tips. Then you're not looking for a sales partner. You're not searching around. You've got some friendlies, you've got some testimonials. Now it's a marketing department. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Well, that's great and welcome. I just sent a note to my virtual administrator, Anne, to make sure that you get the contact information for everyone who attended today's call.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Any final thoughts from anyone on the call? Well,
I always go for the practical, technical, since I'm a packaging engineer, and there is things that I would like to make sure you know about, like how long that nub will last with the on and off. If you're going to do shock and vibration, which is shipping, are you going to get any cracks? Are the temperatures going to affect it? To me, those are technical things which your marketing people aren't going to worry about, but it could make your product go bad while you're sending it out. So I didn't see anything about that. Temperature, flex, that kind of stuff. So
they'll have your contact information too. The next 4 weeks of speakers are, next week is how to avoid basic CAPA mistakes. 2 weeks, Gregory, our in-house IP friend, will have a conversation about intellectual property. On the 11th of October, Anna, if you can join us, Daniel Shepard will be talking to us about M&A. And Jan just yesterday offered her associate to talk to us about package sterilization, so that may also be somewhat relevant for you. Good conversation today. I hope it was helpful for you. For Joe Hage and Joe Hage Enterprises, this has been Joe Hage. And I see you all next week. Thanks,
Thank you.
Dr. Brown.